Good evening. He was sentenced to more than 60 years, but he only had to serve half of it. Here's News 13's Alex Tomlin with how a bad cop got out early for good time, even though he was anything but good behind bars.
Dean, we told you about Bob Davis's release 2 weeks ago. He's the former APD cop convicted of running a burglary ring while he was on the force and suspected of much more. Now we have his prison records, and they show what a problem he was behind bars. Bob Davis is following a strict set of rules since he was released on parole last May. But the same can't be said for how he behaved in prison after he was sentenced in the early 80s for a 3-state crime spree. Disciplinary records show at least 8 major issues during his time in prison, like in 1985 when Davis and a group of other inmates overpowered a guard using a gun and handcuffed him inside a freezer, leading to one of his 2 prison escapes in New Mexico. Or the following year when a corrections officer discovered Davis had fashioned a razor into a makeshift key to unlock his shackles. Davis caused so many problems he was shipped off to California, where he served the rest of his time in 2 of the most secure prisons in the country, Pelican Bay and San Quentin. Records show Davis was disciplined twice for beating other inmates up. It's fair to say Davis was not a model prisoner. So why was he allowed to rack up enough good time to cut his sentence in half? The Corrections Department couldn't talk about specifics to Davis's case, but the Records Bureau Chief gave us some insight on how an inmate this bad could get out early for being good.
As an inmate receives misconduct reports, they become eligible for restoration for loss of good time.
When an inmate is disciplined, they can lose part of their accrued good time, but
it's very unusual that they would lose that good time forever.
Most of the time, if an inmate behaves after serving his discipline, he can earn his good time back. Every inmate's release date has to be calculated based on the law at the time he was sentenced. But no matter what, every sentence
is reviewed thoroughly, whether the inmate has been in the prison system 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 5 years ago.
Under the law in the 80s, when Davis was convicted, he could have cut his sentence in half with that good time. Since then, the law has changed, so the inmates must serve 85% of their sentence for violent crimes. Dean?
All right, Alex, thank you. The Corrections Department says inmates can lop off even more time if they get a GED or certification for a trade skill while they're behind bars.